Commander Marcus Hayes and his crew aboard the Vanguard face an unprecedented anomaly as they observe an unknown object in orbit around a distant planet. What was initially thought to be an irregularity in the scan data quickly reveals itself to be something far more terrifying. The object is not just a ship, but something that changes shape mid-scan, and now it's closer than ever. The crew must face the terrifying realization that whatever it is, it's not just studying them, it's hunting them. The hum of the Vanguard's engines was a constant backdrop, a steady pulse in the cold void of space. Commander Marcus Hayes leaned over the navigation console, watching as the stars drifted past. The mission was routine, at least that's what they thought. Scan the planet, check for any irregularities, report back to Central Command. But now, as the sensors beeped again, something was different. "Captain," Lieutenant Tessa Martin's voice cut through the calm, sharp with tension. "I've got something strange on the scan." Hayes didn't look up immediately, still processing the data on his console. "Strange how?" "It's not a ship, sir. At least, not a ship we've ever seen," Martin replied, her voice tight. "It's changing shape mid-scan." That made him sit up straight. "Explain." Martin hesitated, adjusting the scanner. The screen flickered, showing a strange object orbiting the planet below, its form constantly shifting. One moment it was a geometric shape, something angular. The next, it seemed to smooth out, almost organic, before snapping back into a sharp outline again. Hayes's stomach churned. "Is this a malfunction in the system?" he asked, though deep down he knew the answer. "I don't think so, sir," Martin said. "The object is dynamic, like it's adapting to the scans themselves." The unease spread through the room like wildfire. Hayes took a deep breath and stood, walking toward Martin's station. "Run a diagnostic and reroute the scans. I want to be sure this isn't just a glitch." Martin worked quickly, tapping at the console. "No, sir, this isn't a glitch. The shape, it's reacting. We've never encountered anything like this. I've never encountered anything that could alter its structure based on our scan frequency." The crew exchanged uneasy glances, their faces lit only by the pale light from the console. Hayes stood silently, his mind racing. This was no ordinary find. Whatever this object was, it wasn't just a passive anomaly. It was responding to them, watching them. Hayes swallowed, his throat dry. "Get me a full scan. I want every angle. Don't leave anything out." A new voice came through the comms, interrupting the tense silence. "Commander, you need to see this." It was Lieutenant Raul Diaz, stationed at the external observation post. He was usually the one dealing with routine scans, but his voice now carried a note of panic. "What's going on, Lieutenant?" I'm not sure," Diaz replied, his voice strained, "but I think it's moving. And I'm not talking about the orbit. The object, it's coming closer, much faster than it should be. Sir, I think it's on a direct course for us." Hayes's heart skipped a beat. "What?" "It's moving toward us, Commander," Diaz repeated. "I think it's trying to intercept us." A deep chill ran through Hayes as he turned to face his crew. This wasn't just a scan anomaly anymore. This was a threat. "Raise shields!" Hayes barked, stepping back to his command chair. "Reroute all power to the forward. Thrusters, get us moving." The ship groaned as the engines came online. The vibrations felt throughout the hull. The Vanguard started to shift, its direction adjusted to avoid what was rapidly becoming their only concern. "We're still being targeted," Martin said, her fingers moving rapidly over the console. "It's adjusting to our course. Every time we move, it's matching our speed. It's learning our pattern." Hayes's mind raced. "Can we escape?" "I don't think so, sir," Martin said, her voice quiet. "It's like it's anticipating our every move." A strange hum filled the room, one that seemed to resonate with the very air around them. It wasn't coming from the ship. It was coming from the object. The scans, now fully active, showed the object had morphed completely, shifting into something that resembled a fluid mass, more like an organism than a machine. "We need to get a better understanding of it," Hayes muttered. "Get me more data, anything we can use to communicate with it. I want to know what we're dealing with." "Sir," Diaz's voice crackled through the comms again. "It's here." The object was too close now. It filled the viewport, a mass that shifted with unearthly precision. It was no longer just a shadow or a glitch. It was alive, and it was watching them. Suddenly, the external lights flickered and then went dark, leaving the crew in near-total blackness. "Shields up!" Hayes shouted, but the words barely left his mouth before a deafening boom reverberated through the ship. The Vanguard rocked violently as something collided with its hull. Then the comms went dead. The room was silent, except for the quiet hum of the failing systems. The crew stared at the screens, faces pale, as the object outside slowly morphed again, this time into something almost humanoid, alive, aware, and far too close. And that was when it hit them. The object wasn't just scanning them. It was, now inside their orbit. They thought it was mercy. It wasn't. The vibrations that ran through the Vanguard were enough to shake the crew from their focus. Steele's hands gripped the armrests of his seat tightly, the ship shuddering violently. Under the pressure, the object, now a thing of incomprehensible shapes and fluctuating forms, was closer than ever, its intentions unclear but unmistakably threatening. "Damage report," Steele barked, his voice tight with anxiety. He couldn't afford to hesitate. Now, not when whatever was outside had grown dangerously close. "Minor structural damage to the hull, sir," Rojas answered, his voice shaking despite his best efforts to remain calm. "No breaches yet, but the force is shifting the entire ship. Whatever it is, it's pushing against us." "Can we get away from it?" Steele demanded. "Can we escape?" "I don't think so, sir," Martin replied, looking up from her console, her face pale. "It's adjusting to our course, adapting to every move we make. Can we fight it?" Steele's question was almost rhetorical, but he had to ask. The feeling of being hunted was overwhelming, and every instinct in him screamed that they weren't in control anymore. "I can't say for sure, Commander," Rojas said. "The weapon systems are still locked down. We've had no chance to get them online since—" He trailed off, clearly struggling with the uncertainty. Steele could feel the weight of it pressing in on him. Their ship, well-equipped, well-manned, was at the mercy of something they didn't understand, something far beyond their ability to comprehend or defend against. He moved quickly to the viewport, his eyes scanning the ever-closer object. Its form was still shifting, morphing between solid and fluid states. It resembled an unearthly creature, not quite organic, not quite machine. Its size alone seemed to threaten the very existence of the Vanguard. It was unlike anything human technology had encountered before. "Look at the scans," Martin called out. "It's not just hovering anymore, it's shifting through the space-time continuum. It's folding itself." Steele froze. "What do you mean?" Martin swallowed hard, her eyes fixed on the monitor. "It's like it's bending reality itself. Its physical form doesn't make sense. It's warping," Rojas added. "It's adapting to the way we scan it. The moment we identify one structure, it changes into something else. It's like it can read our technology and evolve in response." "What the hell are we dealing with here?" Steele muttered under his breath. He knew one thing for sure. It wasn't something they could outrun or outsmart. The object was ahead of them, watching them. It was studying them, and it wasn't leaving. "We need to take a different approach," Steele said, his voice steady despite the growing terror within him. "Felix, run another set of scans. Tessa, reroute the auxiliary power. Let's see if we can force this." "In thing to show its hand?" Martin didn't hesitate, but Rojas paused, staring at the console in disbelief. "It's like it already knows what we're doing." Steele didn't have time to argue. Just do it. The crew worked in tense silence, each of them acutely aware of the foreign presence surrounding them. Steele's mind raced. Was this an alien intelligence? A scout? Something that had been sent to observe them? Or something far more sinister? If it had been scanning them, it had already gathered all the information it needed. It knew them better than they knew themselves. Suddenly the ship lurched again, throwing everyone off balance. Steele staggered, barely catching himself on the console as the lights flickered. Then a loud crash echoed through the hull, and the ship jolted harder, this time with a force that made the walls groan. "Hull breach!" Rojas shouted, his voice high with panic. "We've got a breach, starboard side." "Seal it," Steele barked, his mind racing. There was no time to waste. Whatever this object was, it was getting closer, and their resources were dwindling fast. The emergency alarms blared, red lights flashing wildly across the ship. Crew members scrambled to their positions, trying to restore order, but the panic in the air was palpable. "Seal the compartment now," Steele ordered, gripping the comms panel. "Commander, it's no use," Martin shouted. "The object, it's destabilizing our systems. We can't close the breach. It's pulling us in. We've lost control of the ship's thrusters." Steele's blood ran cold as he realized the full scope of their situation. The object wasn't just watching them. It was manipulating the very environment they were in. Every move they made, every attempt to escape, only seemed to make it more aggressive. He stepped forward, trying to steady his breathing. "Prepare for impact!" he shouted, as the object outside seemed to move closer, now a solid mass, a shape that filled the viewport entirely. It was as if it were absorbing all the light around it, pulling the very space-time itself into its presence. For a moment, everything stopped. The ship held still, as if caught in the grip of the object. And then, as if on cue, a voice, low and mechanical, came through the comm system, its words laced with an unearthly calm. "You are not prepared, but you will be tested." The crew exchanged frightened glances as the air in the cockpit seemed to thicken, the weight of the alien presence pressing in on them. It wasn't just a ship, it was something that understood their very nature, their psychology. It was trying to break them. "We need to break free," Steele said, his voice trembling, despite himself. "We have to push forward." But as the ship lurched again, it was clear that their options were running out. And the thing outside was no longer just observing, it was engaging. They thought it was mercy. It wasn't. The room was filled with a low, persistent hum, an eerie sound that seemed to pulse from the walls themselves. Commander Steele stood at the front of the cockpit, his eyes fixed on the viewport, watching the object outside. The shape had changed again. This time, it had taken on a more angular form with sharp, jagged edges, like something made of raw energy. It wasn't just stationary anymore. It was moving with deliberate purpose, its presence almost suffocating in its intensity. "What the hell is it doing?" Martin whispered, her eyes wide as she watched the object flicker and shift, reacting to every slight movement of the ship. "I don't know," Steele replied, his voice low and strained. "But whatever it is, it's not leaving." Rojas, who had been desperately trying to regain control of the ship's systems, looked up from his console. "Commander, I've lost the external comms. I can't even get a distress signal out. It's like it's blocking us." Steele's mind raced. They were being isolated, trapped inside the ship, with no way to reach out. The thing outside had already shown it could manipulate their systems at will. Now it was controlling their ability to communicate. "Keep trying," Steele ordered. "We can't give up. We'll find a way to fight back." But deep down, Steele knew that the battle wasn't just with the object outside. It was with the growing dread that had settled inside the ship. He could feel it in the air, a subtle but constant pressure that made it hard to breathe. It wasn't just the physical threat of the object anymore. It was something worse, something psychological. "Commander," Grant said, her voice suddenly hard. "It's not just messing with our systems. I think it's manipulating us." Steele turned to face her, his brows furrowed in confusion. "What are you talking about?" "I'm serious," Grant replied. "Every time I look at it, this thing outside, it's like it's changing. It's reflecting what we fear, what we don't want to see. It's not just scanning us, it's looking into us." Steele felt his stomach twist. Was she right? Could the object outside be affecting their minds, their perceptions? Was it toying with them, preying on their psychological vulnerabilities? "I don't know how much longer I can hold on," Rojas said, his voice cracking as he frantically tried to stabilize the ship's thrusters. "It's like it's feeding off our fear. Every time I try to correct the trajectory, it pulls us further off course. I can't control it." "Let's keep the ship together," Steele said, trying to sound confident. "Stay focused. We're not giving up." But even as he spoke, Steele felt a gnawing sense of hopelessness creeping into his chest. The object outside, whatever it was, wasn't just trying to break their ship. It was breaking them, one piece at a time. Suddenly, the lights flickered. Once, twice, then everything went dark. "What's going on?" Grant shouted. The emergency lights flared to life, casting an eerie, dim glow across the room. Steele's heart raced. There was no time to waste. "Get the backup systems online," Steele ordered. "We're not going down without a fight." Rojas nodded, trying desperately to reroute power. But as he worked, the room fell silent again, the weight of the unknown pressing down harder than ever. Then the scraping sound began again. Faint at first, a distant sound like something dragging against metal, but it wasn't coming from the ship. It was coming from inside them, inside their minds. The tension in the room reached a breaking point as the crew stood frozen, the sound growing louder. The walls seemed to close in around them, the air thick with the weight of an unseen presence. "Commander," Grant whispered, her voice trembling. "It's inside our heads. It's speaking to us." Steele turned to her, his mind reeling. "What are you talking about?" "It's inside our thoughts," she repeated, her voice strained. "I can hear it. In the silence, in the dark. It's asking questions. It's testing us." Steele's pulse quickened. The object outside, they weren't just dealing with a physical threat. They were being subjected to something far worse, a test, a psychological game where every fear, every doubt was being brought to the surface. "Shut it down," Steele ordered, his voice hoarse. "Shut it all down. We can't let it win." But even as the words left his mouth, Steele knew it was too late. The object had already crossed the threshold. It wasn't just observing them anymore. It was controlling them, bending their thoughts, their will, to its own purpose. Outside, the object shifted again, its form now an ominous dark mass that filled the viewport. It was more than a ship. It was more than an entity. It was something that existed in the spaces between reality, something that had no right to be in their world. "Commander," Rojas's voice was barely a whisper now. "It's inside orbit. It's inside us." Steele felt the weight of his words, the crushing realization settling over him. There was no escape. The Vanguard wasn't just being manipulated, it was being consumed, piece by whatever this thing was, and they were too close to stop it. The ship lurched again, harder this time, as though the object outside had reached its final position, pulling the Vanguard in. Steele could hear the crew's frantic breaths, could feel the rising sense of panic in the air. Their world was slowly slipping away. "Prepare for impact," Steele ordered, though he knew that nothing would save them now. And then the voice came again, louder than ever, filling the ship with a cold, metallic hiss. "You're already part of this. They thought it was mercy. It wasn't." The Vanguard groaned as it was pulled deeper into the orbit of the object. The shaking of the ship intensified with every passing second, the metal walls creaking under the pressure. Steele stood frozen, his mind a whirlwind of thoughts, trying to grasp at anything that could get them out of this nightmare. But the truth was clear now. They were no longer in control. "We can't fight it," Rojas said, his voice strained with defeat. He looked up from the console, eyes wide with panic. "It's inside the ship. It's inside us." Steele's heart pounded in his chest, but he couldn't show weakness now. Not when his crew was looking to him for guidance. They had no choice but to act, even if they didn't fully understand what they were up against. "Get the auxiliary power online," Steele ordered, though his voice faltered. "We'll try one last time to break free." But deep down, he knew it was futile. The object outside wasn't just an alien vessel. It was something else, something beyond their understanding, and it was playing with them, manipulating them, testing them. Every move they made, every attempt to escape, only seemed to bring them closer to the inevitable. The hum of the Vanguard systems died, replaced by an eerie silence. The emergency lights flickered again, casting long shadows over the cockpit. And then the thing outside moved. The shape of the object filled the viewport now, a massive black form that seemed to distort reality itself. It was no longer a ship. It was an entity, its presence overwhelming, suffocating. Steele's breath hitched in his throat as he realized they weren't dealing with an object. They were dealing with an intelligence that could bend space and time. "Commander," Grant whispered, her voice trembling. "What do we do now?" Steele didn't answer immediately. He couldn't. The cold reality set in, the finality of their situation crushing him. There was no escape. There was no fight. Left, the Vanguard wasn't a vessel anymore. It was a trap, a cage. And the thing outside wasn't just watching them. It had already won. Then the voice came again, clear and omnipresent, filling every corner of the ship. "You have been tested." The lights went out completely, and that was the last thing Steele heard. They thought it was mercy. It wasn't.